Thank you so much. So at the height of the pandemic, more than 8 million workers either lost their jobs or had to leave the workplace. Today, 4 million workers have yet to return to the workplace. Furthermore, those workers from historically marginalized populations are the ones who have had to remain outside of the labor market for various reasons, including caregiving needs. Business owners across sectors agree that many job applicants lack common skills such as written and verbal communication, time management, basic math, and digital literacy that are a must upon application. Employers are willing to train in technical skills, yet they are still having a hard time finding workers. As our conversations today have highlighted, there is a need to address the intersection of workers, employers, and education to meet the workforce challenges all our communities are facing. For decades, the Kern Community College District and its 3 colleges have been engaged in creating flexibility in learning and training. Our 3 colleges have deep connections with employers and deep connections with the region we serve. We have done and continue to do workforce development. We do not take that responsibility to train and develop our community's workforce lightly. Today, we are expanding our coalitions across industry sectors to ensure that we are meeting labor market needs, as well as bringing workers and community organizations to the table to shape our approach to workforce development with equity. With all that being said, let me introduce myself. I am Norma Rojas Mora, the Executive Director of Government Relations and Development at the Kern Community College District. In this work, I am partnering with 2 incredible women, Dr. Trudy Gerald, our Vice Chancellor of Economic and Workforce Development, and Dr. Jessica Grimes, our Dean of Economic and Workforce Development. Together, we aim to identify and amplify the connections among workers, students, employers, and education. It's also so great to see so many of our partners here for this important conversation. We have industry, who we'll hear from. I see California Resource Corporation here with us. Thank you for your support and partnership. Muchas gracias a la comunidad, Building Healthy Communities. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Thank you for being here today. And of course, our Central Labor Council also being represented here. So this afternoon, let's really get into the nuts and bolts of how the symbiotic relationship between workers, employers, and education is being put to action. Let's get started with the President and CEO of Kern Adventist Health Hospital, Daniel. Daniel, what are the biggest equity and workforce gaps that you're seeing in the healthcare industry?
Well, as was pointed out earlier in the dialogue, healthcare has been under a significant amount of pressure during the pandemic. And as we watched our healthcare workers show up every day and take care of sick and dying people in our institutions, and the pressure, the mental health pressure on our people has caused enormous change in the way our workforce has been responding to the needs of the institutions. We've watched with kind of bated breath as we've seen the Great Resignation kind of flow through our organization and move out. And then I was already involved in workforce development long before the pandemic ever came to this country, but it really highlighted the fact that our organization, and specifically here in Kern County, we're a net importer of healthcare talent. So Kern County is not developing enough healthcare workers to provide healthcare to our population. And specifically, if you think about the breadth of healthcare workers and the healthcare workers at higher socioeconomic levels, those are completely, we don't have the pathways developed in this community to even come close to serving the needs of our community. And what that means is that our healthcare workforce is not reflective of the diversity that we find in the community that we serve. And so when I think about those gaps that we have, it's first, we don't have enough, period. We don't have enough healthcare workers, period. And second, the healthcare workers that we are able to attract, we basically attract any qualified individual who's willing to come here and serve, which means that our healthcare workers do not reflect the population that we serve in a meaningful way. And that means that when a citizen comes here for care, they often aren't able to connect personally, either from language or somebody that looks like them or somebody that has life experiences that are similar to theirs.
Thank you. Oh, okay, well, we're getting into the nuts and bolts, we said.
Yes, yes.
So, Gisela, you represent workers and bring the perspective of the unions to the table through your work with the United Healthcare Workers.
Right.
What are your current challenges with workforce development? And further, what are the barriers to increasing equity in employment from your perspective?
So in healthcare, only about 10% of entry-level jobs, clinical jobs, have any kind of job ladder. And occupation segregation is very, very common. Our infrastructure lets us work directly, with our workers, our schools, and our employers. So, and that is to remove the barriers for advancement so we can work and we can have the worker in our center of our development. That leads to high demand, higher wage positions for our workers. In addition, key programs, innovations that serve our members include registered apprenticeships that address the critical needs for earn while you learn during clinical and extended on-the-job training for particular roles within the healthcare. In 2021, we had 75 apprenticeships within 8 occupations in our programs. So while we are doing all this great work to advance our union members, we also recognize that there's an incredible need to address ongoing shortages in health, to build the workforce for our future.
Right. And thank you for mentioning the apprenticeships and the importance of apprenticeships as well, because we know that that is another priority. So, Liz, as the director of the Valley Strong Energy Institute at Kern Community College District, can you give us your perspective on the key issues for community colleges, considering the energy landscape in the context of the 2045 Getting to Neutral mandates?
Yes, let me start by kind of giving you a little bit of background on me. I have been a longtime engineering faculty at Bakersfield College, and then I later went into administration. I served as the dean over engineering and industrial technology whenever we spearheaded the development of our Industrial Automation Bachelor of Science degree, which totally colors my perspective on education now. I retired as Vice President of Instruction, but I have failed utterly in retirement and am now helping to build a robust energy program at Bakersfield College. You know, community colleges excel in responding to workforce needs, and they use industry advisory committees to develop curriculum targeting those needs. But let me tell you just a story. My first job out of college, I was working as an industrial engineer at a manufacturing plant. And the design engineers were designing parts that could not be manufactured on the existing equipment the company owned. And the reason they did that is because they didn't understand the constraints of the equipment, because they never talked to the technicians. And so the first thing I did was I went and talked to the technicians. And this was a pivotal point for me as far as my perspective in education and in my career, because it taught me to put a high value on collaboration and on the skill sets of others. And collaboration is what community colleges are so good at. This is their strength. They collaborate with their community, their industry, and their academic partners. So I just first off want to say thank you to all of our collaborative partners that have worked with Bakersfield College and Kern Community College District. You know, traditionally, we have designed our career technical education programs by looking at the past. We look at workforce data, job postings, job placements of our graduates, and then we develop curriculum that's great at teaching and training students to be successful, but to be successful for a point-in-time data point. Because our new technologies are advancing at a faster rate than ever before, our technology is outpacing our training. We're not focused on teaching our students agility. They need the ability to adapt to new emerging technologies. And this is what we learned with the baccalaureate degree. When we developed that degree, there was not another industrial automation degree, four-year degree in the United States. You know, they did not have that term, industrial automation. And we took a risk. And we developed it, and it is meeting our community needs. Our industry is very happy. If we are to teach agility and the ability to adapt to a rapidly changing energy landscape, then we must be anticipatory of emerging technologies. And so that is important that we have tangency to research and development. We have developed partnerships with the National Renewable Energy Laboratories, with Livermore Lab Foundation, which supports Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, and UC Merced. These are critical partnerships because it gives us that tangency to research and development so that we can develop energy technology transfer and workforce development, which is the mission of community colleges. And we want to be conscious of the commercialization impact on our communities. So as we're developing an engineering training curriculum program to meet our community needs, these are the things that we have to keep in mind.
Great, thank you. So, Richard, you're here, obviously, Kern Economic Development Corporation, and there's a big focus on manufacturing. But just even in general, from your perspective, what are the current challenges with workforce development? And further, how can we increase equity and employment from your perspective?
Thanks, Norm. Yes, I mean, we'll talk about the challenges, but I think also the opportunities and best practices in our own backyard. And as I do every morning with my coffee, I was looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, and what hit me this morning was that we set a record for a percentage of job openings in the U.S. We have 7% of total openings versus filled jobs. And I believe that's actually greater in Kern County. One statistic showed that 10% of our STEM jobs are open. So that is a challenge, but it's an opportunity. And as we see in economic development, site selection factors, the number one site selection factor generally is workforce availability and quality. And we hear constantly, you mentioned the soft skills, so important, the technical skills. But most employers say, give me somebody that has a couple of years training, and I will make sure that upward mobility takes effect. I was looking at American Institutes of Research paper, and they hit on the two challenges. And I totally agree. And number one, and this is national, and we can talk about how we're affecting change locally, but number one is education to workforce pipeline. In the past, it's considered broken. How do we fix that, right, that transition? And we'll talk today about some of the programs that we're partnering with on how do we prepare the future workforce. It is so important. And Kern County, and frankly the Valley, is where 80% of the growth is going to happen in California. So we need to make sure that we prepare that talent, that pipeline. And we'll hit on talent retention and talent attraction. How does Kern County do in those areas? We're actually doing better, which I'm very heartened by. And the other issue for challenge is the once and done era of we'll train you once and you're on your way, right? My parents just said, you're going to work on Wall Street, and didn't really, Greed is Good, 1987. When did that movie come out? I love the research and ended up in a research capacity economic development. But I always encourage every employee to find a niche, find this niche career. And we have to show these, students of all ages what those opportunities are. And what does that mean once and done? And I believe Liz hit on that. Tech is advancing so quickly. How do we train employers? You have the amazing industrial automation program where businesses are synced in to education. But there are multiple points in everyone's career. And we have to understand that and make sure that those options are available to our local workforce.
That's great, because it really segues into our next set of questions, which, employers appreciate a contextual knowledge of their sector when they are hiring workers at any level. And we know that when it comes to increasing equity in employment, exposure to careers can have a big impact on students choosing their pathway. So Liz, starting with you, as the Kern Community College District explores and plans for the expected workforce training needs in the energy sector, what specific projects are you discussing with community and industry partners?
Well, we have developed an investment proposal that we're hoping to get funded to establish a California Renewable Energy Center of Excellence, which we call CREL, and that's to advance energy education and training. And this targets collaboration with industry and our community partners, including those in disadvantaged communities, governmental agencies, and academic partners. Specifically, we're focusing on 3 projects: carbon dioxide reduction technologies, clean energy and grid resilience, and clean transportation. We feel that these innovations will shape the regional and statewide economy. So our carbon dioxide reduction includes a mini demonstration carbon capture and storage project utilizing a post-combustion emission source or direct air capture, and then once the CO2 is scrubbed, we'll store in metallic cylinders. The purpose of this is to use it as a living lab in courses and co-curricular activities as demonstration and potential data collection. Our clean energy and grid resilience, that strategy includes the deployment of microgrids to coordinate control of current and future campus energy assets. Likewise, this will include at least 1 microgrid demonstration project. And researchers will be able to observe new technologies in real-world conditions. Students will have access to emerging technologies and be able to utilize data to advance their own learning. And this investment would transform our campus energy assets into one of the country's first living laboratories for microgrid learning, demonstration, and research. The clean energy power generation, energy storage facilities, and connected microgrids will allow multiple communities in the KCCD service area to have a resilient energy resource during public safety power shutoffs or in case of disaster. In clean transportation, we're going to include electrical vehicle technician training, forklift training, and training emergency responders on how to deal with EV and hydrogen-fueled vehicle emergencies. So we have several components. Uh-oh, that fell off. We have several components that will contribute to this, including curriculum and the integration of living labs, community education, academies, upskilling and incumbent worker training, and technology transfer enterprises adjacent to emergency research and development. Sorry. I'm done.
Those are quite a few projects that are planned, so thank you, Liz. Got the mic going?
Yeah.
So, Richard, what are some ways employers can participate in work-based learning activities with their local community colleges?
Well, yeah, great point, because that's where the rubber meets the road: education, working with business. And just for folks maybe not from Kern County, our county's number 4 in the country for STEM jobs, and we're the 3rd most diverse economy in the U.S. So it's great. We have this amazing incubator for companies to grow and flourish, but we have to make sure that talent pipeline feeds into that. So internships, I believe, are the most important factor in terms of creating upward mobility and future employment. And the Chronicle of Higher Education cited paid internships as the #1 attribute that employers are looking for in students. And this could be from 2-year, 4-year, or we're working with the Kern High School District with the students at CTEC and ROC. And so we are actually launching, it's called Kern Intern Connections, with the help of the Kern High School District. Students actually worked with the logo, digital media design, the branding and marketing. And so that's going to be going live in about a month. And it's about linking employers to students. And unfortunately, you have students that are trying to find opportunities, employers trying to find future employees, but the lines of communication are not at 100%. And so we're really excited about that. A couple other things, launched the Manufacturing Alliance of Kern, where the manufacturers are meeting. They're leading the charge across the county, and they're identifying workforce, right? And as well as regulatory issues. But the workforce is really most of the meat on the bones. And we have educators, both high school, community college, CSU being like at the table as the alliance partners. And so I'm really excited about that because these employers want to grow. They want to grow desperately. And so it's our obligation to find the students for them. And so I'm really proud of what, there's the K through 16 collaboration, Kern Education Pledge. So I think the stars are lining as we move forward.
Thank you. Gisela, how can employers become part of the solution to increasing the equity in employment, particularly in the case of incumbent worker training and movement up the career ladder?
Okay. So as a member of the largest healthcare union in California, SEIU UHW, we have 100,000 plus members. We have, what many of you probably don't know, we have 2 workforce partnerships. One of them is Futuro Health, and the other one is our education fund. Futuro Health offers training and support to community members so they can enter the healthcare industry and connect to union healthcare jobs. You can't have it any better. And once they are in the union job, they then have access to additional advancement through our education fund, and which is a multi-employer training trust. In addition, the Futuro and the education fund are active in regional and statewide partnerships to advance healthcare workforce development projects, including partnerships with the Kern County Community College, College District, and in application to the Good Jobs Challenge grant. This is a regional effort that will include union and non-union healthcare employers. In 2021, our education fund served 28,000 healthcare workers. So 70% of those were women, 70% of them were people of color, and another 25% of them were immigrants. So our student graduates have a 90% completion rate with a 50% improved attendance, retention. And those are, and those who move into better jobs, into higher jobs, because of that education fund, they on average get an increase in their wages of 45%. Quite impressive, I think, as a union worker. So our mission is to advance non-clinical and entry-level workers in environmental services, in food services, MAs, medical assistant, nurses assistant, so they go into roles like radiology techs, respiratory therapist, into social worker, being a surgical tech, and there's many others. So in 2021, again, in 1,200 members earned degrees or certification to advance into higher wage clinical roles. Our employers provide the clinical placements and on-the-job training opportunities that our members that our members need in order to advance into these licensed and healthcare positions.
Great, thank you. So staying on the topic of healthcare, Daniel, you identified some of the equity and workforce gaps that you see in your industry. What are some emerging strategies that you see as most promising to address those barriers, especially for marginalized groups?
Yeah, so it's really kind of exciting to sit in this room and listen to the themes as they recur throughout the conversations. And one of them, I'll hit on several. One of them is collaboration. And this work requires collaboration. I've been privileged to be a part of pretty significant workforce development work for more than a decade. And it always requires deep collaboration between employers who are doing the hiring, and oftentimes we employers have a little low degree of patience for the duration that it takes for our academic partners to shift their business environment. And that's nothing against our academic team. It just is the reality. Business is forced to react. If sales drop, you either are going to close or you're going to do something different. And so we're in an environment where oftentimes employers don't have the patience to engage deeply with our academic partners. But if we're going to actually bend the curve on workforce development in a meaningful way, employers have to kind of pull up their big boy pants and come to the table with our academic partners and do the work necessary to think through deeply what has to happen to impact our workers and to build pathways to the table. And so part of what we're doing in Kern County is we've developed healthcare workforce sector partnership. That's kind of healthcare workforce language. In Kern County, we're basically just calling it an oversight group that includes the CEOs of the major healthcare organizations, the leaders of our academic organizations, and the leaders of our workforce development work here in Kern County. We sit in a room and we develop strategy. Norm is actually serving as our chair of our steering committee that includes all kinds of healthcare workforce employers and partners and the leaders of the academic areas across our organization, our community. And that leads us to really another theme that I've heard, and that is pathway development, leadership, employer pipelines that allow us to think about medical assistants that could become a licensed vocational nurse, that could become a registered nurse, that could get a Bachelor of Science of Nursing, and then potentially become a faculty. And some of the innovations that we're working on in that space is to say, how do we take incumbent workers, another theme that I've heard throughout the day, of how do we move incumbent workers through these pipelines so that we could have current workers in a healthcare institution serving as adjunct faculty with our local academic organizations. That allows us to expand the number of faculty, and if you think nursing faculty, that is the number one of the top two impediments to growing nursing capability and faculty positions is the number of faculty available. The second impediment in that space is the number of slots that hospitals are willing to provide clinical placement. And traditionally, we've done clinical placement between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., and yet nurses work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, in order to do that, we on the employer side have to change the way we think about clinical placement, which is an innovation that our team at Adventist Health is really on the cutting edge, working with Bakersfield College to create a 24-hour-a-day, 7 days a week opportunity for nurses to have clinical placement, which obviously, if you're only going 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you can go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the number of clinical placements can be dramatically increased. You have to do both. You have to work with our academic partners to bring some of our team on as faculty, and you have to change the way you think about deploying resources in the hospital so that we can have more clinical placement. So those are a few of the things that we think we can do and we are doing to impact specifically nurses. But these same type of innovations can be applied to many other areas of healthcare workforce development as well.
Thank you for that, and I do appreciate the fact that you've been at this for a long time, so you bring a lot of different perspectives and how we can really implement the work. So what is your call to action? What can we do together to increase equity to benefit all communities and really prepare our students for employment in your sector of focus? That's a question for each of you, but we'll go ahead and start with Richard.
Right, equity is about access to resources. And so we hope through our internship initiative that throughout the county, all schools, all levels, we just hosted a symposium expo, career expo symposium. We had 2,500 students, 4th to 10th grade, from around the county, and we had 120 employees talking. These kids need to see the opportunities in Kern County. And we are number 5 for upward mobility. Think about that. Kern County in the country, odds of you moving from the bottom 20% to the top 20% are higher here than anywhere in the country. And so this is something, but we can't rest on our laurels. And so another way that, frankly, we talk about work-based learning, mentorship, pairing. We have a Women in STEM where they work with students, girls, and try to show them the amazing opportunities in STEM careers. Only 16% of women in our county make up the STEM workplace, which is 25% is the U.S. average. So we address that, and mock interviews. We have to work with these students. It's like a public presentation. And so I know working with Kern High School District, they have a mock interview day coming up. We want the employers to participate, much like the internship. So I think the more that they know about these portals and opportunities, the more that we will be successful in developing the future of our workforce.
Thank you. Isela?
Yes, there's a number of things can be done. One of them is upskilling is one of them. Our members are interested in stackable industry recognized credentials. Like for the imaging tech, they can get certification for MRI or for CT, or in the behavioral health, there's a high demand for it, and such certification as the crisis prevention intervention certification. There's a tongue breaker here. But those are the things. Also for your MAs, for your medical assistants, or for the lab assistant, they like to complete additional upskilling in training programs such as phlebotomy or the emergency room tech. Another one is career education, programs that serve the working adult to advance into the high demand roles within our employers in the healthcare. In nursing, then we have respiratory care again, we have imaging. Those are all high demand jobs, surgical techs and psych techs. The third one is a partnership, the partnership to support a dedicated school or apprenticeship coordinator, and then direct billing to our education fund. That is done on behalf of the apprentice and the student. Other opportunity to partner would be defining the industry needs, the program development and design. Again, as of today, our multi-employer labor management training fund serves over 100,000 union members, 100,000, across 6 SEIU unions and over 20 healthcare employers. Some of them include statewide Dignity or Common Spirit is one of them. Kaiser Permanente is another one. Or within the public health system, we have Alameda Health System, for example, and then a number of smaller community hospitals. So our training infrastructure let us reach out to over, like I said, 100,000 workers directly with continuing education, career advancement, new skill development, and the preparation in the future for good jobs.
Thank you. And I know there's a lot of excitement over the partnership and the opportunities that we will be developing.
Absolutely.
Liz?
Well, we have a lot of collaborative opportunities available because we're in the early growing stages of building this program. We're currently developing an energy workforce innovation consortium as well. And we also have put a lot of effort into community education. And part of the reason for that is because we recognize that in Kern County we have an incoming student generation who perceives the energy industry as unstable. So they're not too interested in going into that field. And we need to change that perspective, not only for the students, but for their parents and for our community, for the faculty, and so forth. So we have had a very successful webinar series, which we bring in professionals. We have different types of topics, and we would like to expand that webinar series. We need people to come alongside us. If you have ideas or want to participate, please let us know. The conferences especially the conference that Chancellor Christian mentioned this summer or in the fall, that will be on energy. We need people to come alongside and participate in that. We also have some really unique opportunities with curriculum. We have an advisory committee of industry partners that give us input on curriculum as we're developing an associate's degree and so forth. If you're interested in serving on that, let us know. But we have been developing non-credit curriculum in energy topics, and we have just approved 3 non-credit courses. Now, the nice thing about these non-credit courses, they can be leveraged into summer academies that target current students and high school students, but we could also offer non-credit curriculum and dual enrollment courses in the local high school. They don't have to pay for the courses, which they wouldn't in dual enrollment anyway, but they don't pay for the courses, but they also don't get any college credit. However, it would start changing that perception of the energy industry. And it does not have the barriers of minimum qualifications for faculty, so it could easily be incorporated into the high schools. We have also been looking at upskilling of adults and training, and we've developed a non-credit project management course that was used. One industry contacted the college and said, if you offer that, we will send every one of our employees over there to learn project management. And the appeal is that it doesn't cost and so forth. So we're trying to leverage some of the non-credit as we're building the credit curriculum that would feed into an associate's degree. And so we also need pathways to employment. Internships are going to be critical, work experience. And if you want to partner with us, let us know, because those are the things that are really going to make a difference to our students. And as we are trying to develop the resources to, to fund our energy work, we need advocacy, letters of support. So you can play that role as well. So we have a lot of collaborative opportunities with energy.
Thank you, Liz. Daniel, do you want to take us home with this?
Sure. Sure. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of decades, you know that people say the healthcare industry is broken. And so when you think about our particular industry, we are known for taking very sick people and tilting them back up and sending them back into the community. We're not very good at actually keeping people healthy. And so part of Adventist Health's mission, and the reason I get involved in workforce development, is because we want to inspire health, wholeness. That means living a whole life. That means, social, economic. That means health and physical health and hope. And so those are the 3 things that our health system says, this is what we want to be in the communities where we serve. And so the best way, you look at the statistics, the best way to actually create longevity and wholeness is, have you finished high school degree and some technical education beyond that, and do you hold a living wage job? Those are the 2 biggest factors to long-term health and well-being. And so if we're going to change the future of the complexity, the complexion of Kern County in terms of how does our workforce reflect and our economic vitality grow across this community, these are the things we have to invest in. And so as a healthcare provider, a major healthcare provider in Kern County, it's our obligation to step in this with our academic partners and the rest of the community to say, how do we do this better? And so the thing that has struck me as kind of I'm a 3rd generation, come from a 3rd generation college graduate family, which would probably put me in a privileged category. I was probably born privileged, right? And so how do we change this for this community, for kids that aren't born privileged, right? How do we create an environment where they can? And what I learned looking back in my career is that I had no idea about the career pathways that were available to me other than the ones that my highly educated, humanities-trained family came from. I didn't know anything about STEM degrees because I didn't have any STEM degrees in my family. So you think about what that means for kids who are coming from much less privileged backgrounds than I do. They don't have any idea of what careers are available to them. So if we're going to make investments into the future, having Kern Community College District, and Dr. Christian and I have had plenty of conversations about this, how do we invest in early college and in career exploration in 7 and 8 and K to 12, right? Those are the things that are going to get kids inspired to be something different than what they are today. And then how do we create incumbent worker pathways that can take people who have finished high school or dropped out of high school and they're in a job and they say, how do I go from here? So creating incumbent worker pathways that allow people to get a vision that says, I don't have to just be whatever I am today that's making minimum wage or a little more than minimum wage. How do I get a pathway to something better than that? And so if we're going to make investments in this community, if we're going to see investment dollars coming from our state and federal government, those are the places that I'd love to see them invested. How do we get kids to catch a vision of a job that they could have that may be different than what their family is, and then give them a pathway where they're connected to resources from employers, from community, from education partners to give them a pathway to get that done.
Fantastic. Thank you. We do have a few minutes, and I wanted to open it up to see if there are any questions from the audience.
Hi, my name's Nora Saranello, and I'm from the Center of Excellence for Labor Market Information. And I just want to say it sounds like what you're doing is along lines of something that I'm happy to see, which I call synthetic photosynthesis, in terms of what you're dealing with capturing in your live lab. I think that's really great, and I'm hoping that you're partnering with the ag industry because I think it's critical in relation to the beef and dairy farm activities that we have. Also, I'm just curious, in question now, are you, as the flip side of focusing on energy, are you incorporating the brownfield issues that we have and thinking about that and how to address it, or that hasn't entered into the equation yet?
I don't think that's entered into any of the conversations that we've had so far, but we are aligning with the ag as well. So our webinar series that we've been hosting is Ag, Water, Energy, and it's the nexus of those three, and that's where we put a lot of work in. So we try to find those intersections and those connections, and so we don't divorce our energy work from the ag.
Great, that's wonderful. And then you had mentioned, I just want to bring forward about, our agility of the community college system. And as an observer of supply, that I know that it's important, and we've encouraged our colleges to hurry up through education, but we have to be really careful because we do not want to sacrifice the quality of our programs, because we see that in the privates, that you get something done in 12 or 16 weeks, especially with healthcare. We also have our state regs that define how many clinicals and things like that we need. But ultimately, there have been a lot of privates who their graduates weren't getting jobs because they weren't properly trained. So it's always a balance between getting something done but maintaining that quality of programming, I think is really critical for the community colleges in order to maintain our reputations. And just my last statement I want to make is having to do with the stackable certificates of which you had discussed. I think that is absolutely perfect, because people on-ramp and off-ramp, as we discussed through these presentations. Right. And in doing that, we open up those doors to continue the education, but there's the next step, and continue to build so that you don't have to stay out of the workforce for this very long period of time. Exactly. You get what you need, take the next step, go back out, get what you need to then progress on your ongoing pathway. And then finally, I'm going to do a throw out for our Verify Viper tool. that we have created, that if you want to know anything and everything about third-party credentials and every single occupation they are affiliated with at the national, state, and now regional level, you need to be looking at our tool that we created as a regional project, because we've got it all in there and we continually update it. We're working on a project right now to even incorporate students in increasing that, the totality of what's in that system, and being able to value a certain credential over a different credential, so that faculty can actually say, this one's worth this amount of money, where that one's worth this amount of money. What is most important for a student to what opportunities that they will have? Thank you.
Thanks, Nora. Are there other questions?
Hi, panelists. Thank you so much for all of the insight into all the work that you all do, and very impactful. My name is Herveen Kaur, and I'm with the Jagara movement. And so a lot of the conversations we're having, surrounded by equity, the intersections within race, gender, economics, whatever it may be. I do have a question in terms of creating these opportunities. How do we plan to outreach or reach out to these minority communities, specifically the Punjabi community, as the second and only out of two Punjabi women in this room? I really do wonder, how are we calling minorities into these spaces? How are we engaging, and how do we plan to outreach to create that in your own individual realms? So, for each of you.
In our program, the Futuro Health is probably the best program to get anyone into the healthcare field, as long as they have the sufficient GED and or the high school diploma, because it's the stepping stone for community members. We started, for a long time, we pretty much reached out to our friends and families, but we started an outreach program through our union to churches, to organizations. If you have something, please give me the name. I mean, everybody will love me. And take that information down, because our goal is to make sure, and our mission is to make sure that, we keep the health force growing and making sure that we have enough healthcare workers. And it is entry-level jobs, but it, again, like you mentioned, it's a stepping stone, and it is a stepping stone into bigger and better jobs, just like indicated by Richard.
Absolutely. And I can address it as well. We really have started to do a lot of outreach as a community college district. We have the High Roads Training Partnership, which is already engaging a lot of worker and community organizations. And so, as Liz said, there are plenty of opportunities to bring individuals to the table. So it's really about incorporating folks into this growing coalition that's being built in each one of these sectors. And so it's been great to have that representation and to have those conversations, and acknowledging that we're here to partner. So absolutely being able to draw anyone who is interested in developing. And it's also identifying those community groups. We're already working with so many of those community groups. The Dolores Huerta Foundation, Building Healthy Communities. How do we start really having the conversations with your organizations, but not just with your organizations, more importantly, with your communities and in your communities? How do we make sure that when we're giving this information, it is accessible and it is in the language that folks understand, so that they're not intimidated by coming back to school? So we recognize this as being of critical importance as we're developing these pathways. Sorry, I know I'm not one of the panelists, but it's something that I'm very passionate about and had to throw out there. So I'll turn it to you.
So Norma, I'll answer that question. So Adventist Health has made significant investments in reaching out to communities. In fact, we have 3 full-time equivalent employees who are dedicated to doing community outreach, and 2 of them are here in this room today. You may know Kiyoshi Tomono, who leads that work on behalf of Adventist Health. And we have partnerships with the Sikh Women's Association. We have partnerships with almost every ethnic group represented in this community, being intentional about whether it's the healthcare needs, whether it's creating workforce development pipelines, whether it's helping kids with vaccines. These are significant investments that our organization is making directly in line with your question. And then I also want to make a comment about the partners of choice for Adventist Health are our community college district and our state college for training programs, because, directly to your comment about the quality of graduates, because of the quality of graduates we see coming out of our state aligned institutions. So I also hope that you heard my comments about working with academic partners from the frame of employers need to step to the table, even if maybe it's a little hard to digest the difference in academic world than it is in business world. If we want to change the future of workforce and workforce not be the #1 complaint of employers as to what's prohibiting growth, we need to get at the table with our academic partners to actually work through these changes. Because I've never sat at a table with an academic partner who said, oh, we don't care what you need. They always say, how do we get there? And then they help me understand what are the barriers and the issues that our academic partners are facing, and then we usually can find a way to get to a solution.
I would also, is it okay if I add?
Sure.
I would also like to add just an example. What Bakersfield College and Kern Community College District have really made a priority to serve their rural communities. And for example, at the Delano Center, we have the only heating, ventilation, air conditioning, or HVAC program in the whole district is centered at Delano. So we put that at a high priority. But one of the things that I see happening in Delano is that they are building, and this was one of our goals, was to building a strong STEM pipeline, because if you're going to have a broad-based energy program that's going to be successful, you need a strong STEM base for it. And so they've always put that as a high priority. I think they're planning on putting one of the microgrid living labs at Delano. And so we also are building out at Arvin, and I think there's some the energy projects that are going to be happening out there that are going to be connected to curriculum.
Okay. Well, I know we're a little over, Richard, but no? Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you, teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to take just a very short break and come back at 1 o'clock, and we're going to be looking at the community college baccalaureate programs at that point. So go ahead and take a moment to stretch before we dig back in. Thank you.